I want to welcome, well, first of all, how you guys doing? Welcome to the Mail to Man podcast. I have a very special guest today, a very personal guest to me. So it's a good day. I want to welcome my mother, Daphne Hull. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. All right. So obviously this episode wasn't planned for this week, wasn't planned for today, but thank you for showing up and being able to do it. Kind of seeing this space and seeing the studio, what feelings is it bringing up for you?
It makes me feel extremely proud. I'm extremely proud to see the work that you've done on this room to make it a place that feels like you want to talk and you want to share. And I feel very proud.
We talked about it when we were growing up, but we talked about it obviously we were growing up, but I don't think a lot of people know uh, because they see you here now. So I want to take them to your roots. Um, But you were born to a single mother. I think Granny was like what, 13, 14 years old when you were born. From Lemoyne Gardens at that time was probably the worst hood in Memphis, or it was, up there. Um, what was take us back to growing up, your roots. How was it like for you growing up?
So there are a couple of things. One of them is I didn't realize we were poor until I started. I went to, I was what they called, I guess, gifted and talented or whatever. There was a program called CLUE, which stood for Creative Learning in a Unique Environment. And so you did some testing over in school, and then if you scored high enough, I guess I don't want to say IQ, but intellect was high enough, then you went to these other programs at other schools. So I was in the CLUE program at my elementary school, which was, in the heart of the hood. So my school was Georgia Avenue Elementary, and it's across the street from Booker T. Washington High School. It's surrounded by Foot Homes, Clavin Homes, and Lemoyne Gardens. So it was so everyone in the school, I think that there may have been some kids who were children of maybe administrators or teachers or whatever, that they may have gone there because their parents were there, or there was someone in the school that they were associated with. But all of us were poor. We didn't know it, so we didn't realize it. But yes, I was born to a single mom, not just a single mom, but a 14-year-old. And my father, who the reason I'm here now, he just passed away. He was 20 years old when she became pregnant, and when I was born, he was 21. So it was difficult. So his mother reared me, and not only did she rear me, she adopted me. So I don't think that would have happened from what I know of the story. We all of us talked about it over and over. That wouldn't have happened except that my mother joined the Marines after she graduated from high school, because she went back to school after I was born, and I never lived with her. I never lived with any of my mother's side of the family. I was with my paternal grandmother from the time I came home from the hospital. And that was because she was very young. My maternal grandmother put her out of the house. She put her out of the house before even I was born. There used to be some places here, I don't even know if they still exist, but they used to be called, not just here, but around the country, called Bethany homes. And those are places for unwed mothers. So
Mhm.
when she had to leave the house, that's where she went. Her aunt, her grandmother and her great aunt ensured that she had a place to go. So she was there until I was born. And then when I was born, my father's mother took custody. But I was not adopted until, I don't know, I'm not even exactly sure of the age, but it was probably 7 or 8. And that's because maybe a little younger. I think I've shown you my birth certificate that has, or something that had my mother's last name on it before the adoption was final. But because she joined the military, she went to the Marines. So at that time, I'm not sure if this is still the case. We'd have to ask your sister if she ever has a baby. But at that time, you could not have custody of a child and join the military. As far as women are concerned, I'm not sure about men. But to ensure that she was able to join and able to serve, then a formal adoption had to take place. So that's how I ended up with my grandmother, which at the time lived in Lemoyne Gardens, LMG. She She lived there and she had lived there since they were built. So my father, who just died last Thursday, was 75. He was born there. She was pregnant with him when she moved there, and he was born there. So, and she lived there for 40 years. So until they did some modifications there and they tore them down completely. That's about how bad they were. They tore them down completely and then rebuilt what's now called College Park. But she lived there from the time they were built until they tore them down, and she moved over to, Mill Creek Apartments, but it was difficult, childhood was difficult. My grandmother, when I was born, was retirement age, and her youngest child I was born May 24th, her youngest child graduated a couple of days before that from high school.
What you just told, this is something I just found out. You told me she she had to she was either she had to raise her siblings too from an early age. So she
My
was
Edith?
uh
Yes.
she was raising.
So she, it's just what it was back then. Just in her day, she was born in 1920,
Mhm.
and she had her first child at 12 years old. So her mother passed away when she was very next year, and so she had some younger siblings that she was responsible for. She did have an older sibling that kind of took some of the lead as well, but she kind of reared her younger siblings, um, and so she when I was born, it was really kind of a bad thing. I said this to both my parents, you guys go and make a decision and then you give that child away to someone else. And who wants to rear a child at retirement age? She was ready to retire. And her last child was graduating out of seven, was graduating from or had just graduated from high school, and then they bring this baby and say, "Here you go. Let's take care of that." I can't imagine. I can't wait for you and Maya to have babies or Brandon or Asham, but I can't imagine, you know, 15 years from now, and that would put me basically 70, but 15 years or so of now and saying, hey, you know what? We just want to travel the world and do what we want to do. You take the baby and we'll come back later. I can't imagine that happening. So, the environment was not great growing up. It was actually pretty bad in some cases. But, the older I get, the more I understand why some decisions were made or why sometimes we do the things we do. When growing up and even into early adulthood, I didn't understand how and why she did some of the things she did and how and why she acted.
Um so that definitely puts a more color to the story because, you know, if she was raising kids at 13 and 14, you
And
know,
now she's still raising kids
raising kids all the
over
way to the
60.
70.
Yes.
But and if you don't mind, I do kind of want to go into it. It wasn't just that they placed her on you. Like that resentment kind of, it did seep down to you. She was very abusive growing up from what I hear. She didn't necessarily favor women. She favored the men. So it was hard for you growing up. What was it like growing up in her household, you know?
So she was, and I want to preface all of this by saying, again, as you get older, you understand more of why people thought the way they did or they think the way they do. So I don't blame her for any of what happened. But yes, it was very difficult. She did have a preference for boys. She had four boys and three girls. And from the outside looking in, it did not look like I'm not including myself, although I was adopted, so I was the fourth girl. But from the outside looking in, it did not appear that she treated her male children as well as she treated the male children. She was just, it's just the way some people are. She was partial to boys. She had a more of an affinity for her sons. I'm not saying that she didn't love. It's no doubt that she loved everyone, but there was a different affinity for her sons than there was for the daughters. So it was difficult because, and again, stating the fact that I understand it much better now. And you put this into perspective. If you start having children at 12 and 50 plus years later, you're still rearing children, that's a long time. That's a long time to do anything. So I can understand why, the anger and the animosity sometimes was there. I don't like the way that she handled a lot of the situations, silence being used as a tool, extreme anger. But as an adult my age with adult children, it helps put things more into perspective. I didn't like it then, and I pushed against it then, but now I have a different outlook on why some things may have happened. Not to say that she was right in everything, but as an older adult, sometimes you make the best decision with the information that you have versus the right decision. You have to make a decision based on the information that you have. And sometimes you don't have all of the information. Sometimes you just choose to make a decision that you made, but it's more understandable at 54 than it was at 14.
Did you because all right, I understand what you're saying. Did you feel loved growing up?
No,
Why not?
no. Because like I said, I have a problem with this, and I've seen this in relationships and personal relationships and then romantic relationships. Because silence was used as a weapon, I when you start to go silent on me, I'm immediately going to return that energy. So no, I did not feel love, but not because now I think she didn't love me. It's just people's ability to express themselves. And I never once was I ever hugged. She never hugged me one time when I was growing up. I know that if she did, I would say this, if she did, it was as a small child where I don't remember. And I have memories. I have memories from the time that I was 4 years old. I can tell you a situation right now that happened when I was 4 years old. I called my aunt to ask about it, and she remembers it. So I have memories. I just don't, I never remember. I was never ever hugged by her. I was hugged by my father when I would see him. And I was occasionally hugged by my mom when I would see her, but they were right here in the city. But because they didn't have custody, there was no immediate need to be there or to offer love or show support. They just didn't do that. And
Mm.
then everybody was going on with their own life. My dad was, you know, living his life, and he had additional children. Even though I had an older sister before I was born, and he had more children. My mom had more children after. I'm the oldest of her children. I had additional siblings, so everybody was living their life. After the military, she was married and had more kids, and so everybody was living life. But I was kind of stuck in a time warp because my grandmother was retired and she was at home all day. So there were things going on at school, things that I was involved in, and there was never any parental figure there. So if I was a major red and I was in Clue and I went to the optional school and then I ended up going to the private Catholic school and all that. But I played in the band and I ran track and I did tons of things, but there was never anybody there who showed up because everybody was living life. And she was at an age where she wasn't interested in doing those things. And we didn't have a car, so she couldn't just pick up and come, even if she wanted to. We had to rely on other people that she knew or people that she had worked with or formerly worked with to take her places or one of her children. But there was no parent there to see me in those accomplishments. They never saw those things.
How often did you see your dad?
Because that was his mom, I saw him more than I saw her. So I would see him. I don't know. It just depends. The job that he had kept him pretty busy, but he only worked that job like 6 months out of the year. He was
Mhm.
what's called a steam fitter or a pipe fitter, meaning he did welding and very, very lucrative job. Lots of money, especially for back then in the 70s or 80s. But if he was working those, whatever 6 months he was working, they got laid off a lot. Um, but I would see him more often. So maybe I would say yearly, maybe 3 or 4 times a year. I saw my
And
mom considerably less than that.
mm, how did you feel towards your dad because he was
I
there?
loved him. So there's this thing that girls have with their dads, no matter who their dad is, no matter what kind of person he is, they have to do something to make you not feel that there's always this girl dad kind of thing. And I didn't realize what that was, but I've got a picture right now. I've got to find it. I was hoping that I could find it for the funeral, for the slideshow, but I'm not sure since I've moved and I got things in storage right now. I don't really know where it is. But I went to a at my high school, Memphis Catholic Go Chargers. There was a father daughter dance, and he took me to that dance. First thing
Mhm.
he had ever done like that, but he took me to that dance, and I remember getting dressed up and couldn't wait for everybody to see my dad because nobody had ever seen any of my family, like my mom or dad or grandmother, anything like that. So only time they ever came to the school, my grandmother would come is if there was something wrong or they need to pick me up from because include in junior high school we would go no elementary school we go from one school to another. So they never saw them. So I was so proud that he took me to that. But I loved him. There was so you couldn't tell me anything, nothing bad about my dad. Like I knew, he would come pick me up every now and then and take me to on the weekends, we go to his church. He went to the church that he went to. We go over there. The church had a picnic or something. He'd take me to these women's houses and I had sisters that I was aware of and we were close as little girls. And so I would go to my older sister's house sometime and her mom treated me just like I was her daughter. Never, even though she wasn't with my dad, she always treated me well. Then my younger sister, Aunt Jerry, her mom, same thing. Whenever I would go over there, it was just like I was one of her two daughters. It was never any difference. But I don't care what anybody said, if other women that I was around that he dealt with, no matter what they said, no matter what my mother said, nobody could tell me anything bad about my dad because I just loved him. And it wasn't until I went to college that I got to see a perspective outside of the little bubble that I was in that I realized this is not fatherhood. Like
Mhm.
what happened, that's not what a father is supposed to be. I'll tell you a quick story, and this is in no way shade to him. God rest his soul. He just passed away. I think I've told you this story before. When I went to college, I'm a first generation college student. So while there were other people in my extended family who have my uncle, my brother, Uncle Jimmy, who had a college degree. There were a few people very, very sprinkled through that had degrees. I was a first generation college student. So I went there and my dad and his girlfriend at the time took me to school. We get there, from Memphis to Knoxville is about, I don't know, 6 hours, 6.5 hours, something like that. And so we drove there. We got lost. We ended up going to, now that I know what Alcoa is, we ended up driving all the way through Alcoa because we missed the exit
Mhm.
and all that. But we get to the school. I lived in Massey Hall before it was all girls dorm. I lived in Massey Hall on the fourth floor. We get there, uh, go in, register, let them know I'm there, grab a what do you call those carts that you put your luggage and things on.
Mhm.
So grab one of those, and I saw he parked in the front like all the other parents were. Put my bags on there, and I didn't have anything. So I had 2 or 3 little bags that I had bought from the place, kind of some luggage that I had bought, and, we put those on there. I took all the stuff out of the car. He took the stuff up to my room. His girlfriend never got out of the car. Took the stuff up to my room. We took it off the dolly. And he went back we went back downstairs and I thought, we would go. I had a friend, very good friend, Sonia. We went to high school together and she was there as well. She went to UT and we ended up not being able to room together, but we were good friends. And so her dad and her parents were there and they were, she was talking about, oh, we're gonna go down on the strip down at UT and we're gonna have dinner. So I was thinking the same thing, me and my dad and his girlfriend will go. We got back out to the car and he said, "Okay, then I'll see you later." And I had, I still had the dolly. Hadn't even put that away. But they got back on the road and they came back to Memphis.
Mhm.
And I never knew why, as a functioning adult now, maybe he needed to get back so he could go to work. Maybe, he was, uncertain about what his girlfriend's plans were for the next day or for the rest of the weekend because this was on a Saturday. But all I can remember is you brought me to this place 6 hours, 6.5 hours away from home. And while I was glad to be away from home because I just wanted to be out of the constraints that I was in. I was glad to be away from Memphis. You just brought me and dropped me off. You just left me there. And then when I got into some academic trouble, the second semester started losing some scholarships and those kind of things. I lost them because I didn't know anything about, going to school and actually going. Nobody was there to tell me to go to class. So if you didn't tell me, like if I didn't want to go, I didn't go. And got into a bunch of academic trouble and was put on academic probation. And so I called him. So, scholarship stopped, all the things that I had gathered, all of the funds that I had from the first semester were drying up. And they were like, we can't give these to you until you prove the second semester that you're going to turn this around. I think my GPA was like 1.3 or something ridiculous. But I called him and I said, but a lot of it was me. I was wilded out at UT, but I was, I had been very, very sheltered and I just wanted to try life, try life out. So, I called him and said, "Hey, I don't have anything to eat. My meal plan was gone. All the things that would have allowed me, sustenance and to be able to really live like the other students that were there, who were doing what they were supposed to do, might I add, and I wasn't." I said, "I need, some money. Can you send me?" And I specifically said, "Can you send me $50?" And there was a reason why I asked for that. I'll tell you that another time. But I specifically said, "Could you send me $50?" And his words were, "No, I can't send you $50. I have to buy cigarettes for this week."
Mm.
And that turned a page for me in how I felt. I never stopped loving him, but I started seeing him in a different light. And it wasn't until I was much older that we were able to repair the relationship and move forward. Because I was angry. I was angry for many, many years. Not just about that, other things, but it was things that I was able to see away from the situation, not being mired in it. I was able to see things that had happened and recall situations that I kind of blew off because he was my dad. I just was able to see them then. And then I didn't like what I saw.
So it's almost like just as if he kinda dropped you off with his mom when you were a baby. He just kinda dropped you off at college,
I
that
have
same young boy.
abandonment issues. You know that. If
Mhm.
you're my son, you know that I have abandonment issues. So um yeah, it was like that. It was in hyper independence, hyper vigilance about things is a trauma response. It's just a trauma response from being abandoned over and over and over again. It's a trauma response, and I think, it takes a while for people to understand that. But yeah, I felt like and it didn't, that didn't come full circle for some years, but you hit the nail on the head. Like, you abandoned me as a child, as a baby. You abandoned me when you took me to college. There have been some other situations where I could use that same analogy, but yeah, that's exactly what it's all about.
Okay, so in this time, your mom is still alive. From like, okay, you seen your dad, you said 3 or 4 times a year, which is nothing, but where where is your mother as she's getting out of the military and getting remarried and stuff? Where does she I assume she doesn't live far. What's happening?
So she lived in Whitehaven, and I was very proud of her. I spent far less time with her and her side of the family than I did my father's, because obviously I was there with his mother. But she was there. She lived in Whitehaven. I was very proud. I would never say it because I felt like I should have been there. But she had a house. She had bought a house. There's a place right now, and every time I'm in Memphis, I always drive by it. She had a house on a street called Clarice Circle
Mm.
here in Memphis. And I was very proud of the fact that she bought a house because we lived in the project. So, I would I would tell them live that somebody would ask me, "What's your address?" Like when I got to junior high school, and I started to realize that everybody's not poor like this. Everybody doesn't live in these apartments like this. Everybody doesn't hear gunfire at night and see people getting beat on during the day and all that kind of stuff. People don't live like that. Once I got to junior high, I saw that, and when people would ask me for my address, I knew her address by heart down to the zip code, and I would always say that was my address. So, but she was here, and then I have 2 younger sisters. One is, I think, little over 6 years younger than me, and then the other one is about 9 years younger than me. but she had them and she was married and, it was just she just was doing life, and again, by this time and we're talking about when I'm in junior high school, when I was in elementary school, she was still in the military, she was still a child. It was I mean, I think I don't know, I guess when she had my sister under me, she may have been 20, 21. So she was still a child. And I think I sent you guys, my kids, I sent you all this meme from Instagram the other day that said, when you think about the fact that at your age right now, your mom was already caring for you and already paying bills and all that, like it's amazing, something like that. And you all of you like were like, wow, really? Like that's a big deal. But you know, as much animosity as I could pretend to have, when I think back on it, what would I have been doing at 21 with a child? Like not a baby either, like a 6-year old, you know? I mean, you weren't born until I was 25 or right at 25. And I didn't know what to do. I mean, I didn't know what to do with any of you until, you and I especially, because you were the first, we grew up together. Even though I was a bit older than most of my friends when they had kids, I didn't know what to do with a baby. So what do you do? And what do you do at 20? What do you do at 15, 14, 15 with a baby? So there was nothing for her to do. Her mother insisted that she executed an adoption and she went with it. I don't know how she would have fought against it anyway.
Do you ever feel a way that she didn't come back and get you?
Did. I did for a lot of years, but her life was tumultuous.
Mhm.
I did. I wanted, there was a house and there was a car and there was a stepdad and I all I saw was rainbows and dreams and kisses, but their life wasn't like that either. My 2 younger sisters, they had a hard life, and it didn't look like it from the outside because of the trappings, the things that it looked like they had, but my mom developed over the years a drug addiction, and so it was not easy for them either, and so many years I was angry that she didn't come and see me or she didn't come and take me back and rescue me. But even if I don't know if she wanted to, I don't know if she ever wanted to, but even if she did, my grandmother wasn't letting me go. She was not going to let me go. And that was I think that was more of a control issue than, thinking that she may not have been a good parent. But I think the best thing happened. No matter how bad the situation is, I think, God sees all, knows all, and even as bad as it was for me, and there were some good things. Don't ever think that there weren't any good times and laughter and people coming to visit and that kind of thing. But for as bad as it was, that was exactly where I was supposed to be. I wouldn't be who I am now if I hadn't gone through some of those trials and tribulations.
Yeah, that's interesting because I'm going through my trials and stuff right now, and you don't really understand what's going on. You just see something that's negative and you see another way that could be better, and you feel as though, why isn't it this way? But, you know, because I want to use this intro to our next topic. You are different, no shade to my aunties. You are different than your siblings. So I know growing up, they was calling you bougie and this type of bougie and things like that because you speak differently, you think a little differently. And again, I love my aunties, all of y'all. But, a lot of people, when they see you out, they don't know that you from LMG, the type of Memphis that you're from. You don't have any gold teeth, any tattoos, haven't been to jail or things like that, or, don't have a record.
I have tattoos, son.
I mean, you have
Remember,
tattoos, but
I have
not like
tattoos.
facial tattoos and stuff
Yeah.
like that, or anything that's not unprofessional. That's what I'm trying to say. But you go to college, you meet my dad. Of course, we know how that went. And then, uh, you get married. Obviously, I'm in the picture, and then my brother and my sister come in the picture. What was from that point to your mom passing away at such an early age? Because I feel like that gets forgotten a lot. She was only 35 when she passed away, and now you're in a whole nother city away from that. With a baby and two others on the way. What was it like? What was that time of in your life like?
So, um, it was difficult. So your grandmother died, was murdered here in this city, on July 4th of 1992. So you weren't born yet. And it was a difficult time. And it was difficult because I did something I shouldn't have done on the day that she died, something that I can never recover from. But I did something and I was not able to I didn't see her. It was my intent it was her intent for me to be here because it was the 4th of July, and her mother, her grandmother, all of that side of the family always did a lot of celebration around holidays, and 4th of July was a holiday to them. So I didn't get a chance to see her, but it was difficult. And yes, I haven't always had with my maternal siblings. I haven't always had the relationship I have with them now. It didn't used to be bad relationships, but we were all much younger. I was 21 when she died. My other sister was, of course, 6 years younger, 15 or so. And then the other sister was really very young. She's 9 years younger than me. So, she I don't know, she may have been 9 or 10, something like that. So the relationships they weren't strained at that point because we were so young, but there was the beginnings after my mom got killed, there were the beginnings of the divide where people would play us against each other and pit us against each other. And that became such a thing that it just stuck. So then they would say, "Yeah, you think you're better than everybody, and you live in Knoxville and you don't even sound like you're from Memphis." And that was not intentional, but it wasn't unintentional either. I left Memphis for a reason. I didn't want to be consumed by what I pictured Memphis as at that time. So I didn't want to be consumed by that. And it was never me. I mean, I was the one that grew up and like we just talked about in LMG, I was the one that grew up seeing the stuff and hearing the stuff and being afraid to go to sleep at night because I was afraid somebody was going to break in and, all of that. Even though we were hood rich, as they call it, we had the people around us, there were people who didn't have as much as we did. My grandmother kept our yard looking nice, and we had a white picket fence that my uncle built around our yard, and everybody that lived in our building, because once they saw hers, everybody wanted one. So everybody got a fence built. But at the end of the day, we were still poor. We were still disadvantaged. And so I was the one that got labeled with, "You think you're better." But I came from the worst of all of us. And after a while, that became a problem for me. And I would stay away. I would go, you remember after you were born, we would go 6 or 7 years at a time without coming to Memphis. So after my mom died, didn't have a relationship with my father. My grandmother passed away. That raised me passed away in 1997. There was no reason for me to come.
Mhm.
And so we isolated ourselves. Don't know if that was the best thing to do, but it was our decision at the time. My stepdad, my ex-husband, and we just did Knoxville. We did Knoxville. That's where we lived, and we didn't do a whole lot of traveling back and forth to Memphis.
So to kind of fast forward, so because you mentioned it, first question is, how did you learn how to parent? Where did you learn? And then what was that time in your life going through a divorce, being by yourself?
Okay, so I probably can't say what I want to say to you because you feel very strongly about what you think I'm probably going to say. But I don't know how I learned to parent. It was just trial and error. One, you don't know what you don't know. And two, I was never parented and certainly not properly. So I just, the only thing I could do was wing it. Um, it was just it was sometimes were difficult, but and I never wanted children. I don't know if I've ever told you that. That may be something new for the podcast, but
I think you have a long time ago.
yeah, I never wanted kids. I didn't care for kids. I didn't like being around kids. There's a whole backstory behind that, that we won't get into, but I never wanted kids. So when you were born, it's like it was like a wake up call. And I think I know I've told you this before, but it was like I fell in love. Like I didn't like kids, and I was thinking the whole time, what am I gonna do? And it's a boy, and I don't know, I'm a girl, so I don't know how to deal with a boy. But it's like I fell in love right away. And while my parenting style may have been very different, it's only because I didn't know what to do. And so I'm just trying to figure it out as I go. So there were times when I was, the first few years, the first couple of years, I'm sure you won't remember this because you guys have your own opinion about discipline, corporal punishment at home. But the first couple of years, you can ask Joe, I never spanked y'all. I didn't spank y'all because I felt like I had been abused as a child and I didn't think that I would be able to stop it if I started it. I didn't think I would be able to control the emotion. So I didn't spank y'all. And so then you were born
I
and
definitely
then
don't remember that, by the way.
of
But
course you don't remember that. Of course you don't. But I didn't, and Joe, at the time was like, no, you can't, we got these boys, because there was you and then Brandon came a little over 2 years later. We
Mhm.
got these boys. We gotta, we gotta let them know that we mean business. And something, I can't remember exactly what happened, but something happened where it was just, y'all were just all over the place. And finally I was like, I hit both of y'all on the bottom. And it was just like everybody was shocked, and because I swore that I would never put my hands on one of my kids because I didn't want to lose control. And then I realized, to your dismay, I'm sure, that I you can discipline a child without abusing them. And once I realized that, and Joe was very good about, making sure that there was a good level of there was a good that we kept things at a respectable level. And so then you guys started to get whippings, but then you guys got to be like, you're 6'5", 6'6" ish. Brandon's over 6 feet. Like y'all got to be big. And I had to do something, or y'all were gonna, especially after I got divorced. Joe and I got divorced. Y'all couldn't beat me up. So not that you would have. So I didn't know anything about parenting. I didn't know what a good, you know, household was supposed to look like. So I didn't know anything about parenting. So I just did what I thought to do. Wasn't always right. Many times it wasn't right. But I just tried to do what I thought was best in the time and make the best decision with what I had. And what was the second part of your question?
what was okay? So from there to now getting divorced and now really being by yourself with three
Oh,
kids, what
yeah,
was it
that's
like
right.
in your life?
So that was hard because I never thought I was gonna get divorced, even though I was the one that left. I took y'all, and not without his knowledge. We had talked about it before. We were having some marital issues, and so we bought investment properties and we flipped properties. You remember that? And we had a house that was just nearing completion, and I was like, okay, well, I can take the kids and move there. Stupid move, but that's what I did. And if I didn't think we would get divorced. I thought that if I moved the family to another part of Knoxville, that he would realize I don't want my family to be over there. I want my wife and my three kids in this house. That's not what happened though. That's and on my part, there was a silly assumption on my part because you don't do things that you're not really committed to. I never thought I would get divorced. So when things continued to happen during our separation and we ended up getting divorced, I was furious. I was mad for years. I was very mad because I never thought I was going to get divorced. I thought that and this is my thought then, this is not any way shade to him, but I thought he would come to his senses and say, I don't want to lose my family and let's put this family back together. But that didn't happen and we got divorced. And then again, I felt abandoned. And what I felt after the divorce is something that I think a lot of people may feel, but they don't know how to articulate is every single person that is supposed to love me, that is supposed to care for me, that is supposed to do right by me, that is supposed to be there for me. Every single person to this date has not done that. And I could not understand that. I did not understand why I was going through this again. Like, I'm not saying I didn't do anything wrong, especially in the marriage, but with all of those things and all of that strife, it would like be buried. And then when something else will happen, those thoughts will come up, what you just asked me about. Every single person that's supposed to love me doesn't. And so, for a fact, I've dated here and there since we got divorced or we separated when I think you guys were 8, 6, and 4. And we actually got divorced about a year and a half or so later. But I've been single since then. And again, I think that's a trauma response because I can't fully invest in anything else because I'm waiting for the other shoe to fall. Like I'm always waiting for them to come and say, well, I don't know if I really want to do this, or yeah, I don't think I want you here anymore. So why don't I just let you go somewhere else and do something else? That seems ridiculous, but that's how I hear it when something happens.
I think, and I agree with that. I want to get your opinion on this. I feel like you have, knowing them growing up, I feel like you have dated and chosen guys, whether consciously, I think it's subconsciously, that you kind of knew would not be there. That this is what I feel subconsciously, that you kind of knew that weren't reliable guys. Because when I look back, man, I remember the first guy.
Don't
Uh,
say any names,
I ain't gonna say. I'm
please.
not gonna say no name.
Please.
But I remember the first guy, and I remember, just some other flings. It wasn't a whole lot because you definitely did a good job of not
I never
bringing them
wanted to bring
around,
people around y'all.
bringing people around.
Do
But
you
I kind
remember
of
telling
remember.
me, I'm sorry to get off the subject just a
Mhm.
little bit about it. Do you remember you guys telling me after I think you guys were all 18 or more, saying you really should have brought people around. Like we would have wanted to meet people. We would have wanted you to date more. We didn't want you to be sitting at home alone.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that, and I remember saying that because as you get older, like I don't fully understand. Maybe I do a little bit, but because we never like you were with us. Like I don't feel like I didn't have a I didn't have the situation you had growing up where I was missing my parents. You were there, even though you worked, you were there. So I don't fully understand the people who don't want their parents to date. Because as I get older and as I was getting older, like I feel strongly about having you protected, especially since I'm not there. I feel very strongly about that. I think about that often. So, she's single. But anyway, but to get back to what we were talking about, after that happened, I definitely there was a change. And for my part of the story, obviously you were my stepdad. Early on, he did a really good job of making me feel a part, and you guys did. I definitely because it was so tumultuous with my dad and his behavior, and then y'all being young at the same time, I always kind of felt like a little bit of an outsider in the house. And then when we got divorced, when there were
No,
the
you're
divorce.
right. When we got divorced, you're
Okay,
absolutely
yeah.
right.
Well, when we got divorced, and then he made it more apparent that those were his kids. So my brother and my sister, I'm talking about, they were his kids, and I wasn't a part of that. I think subconsciously too, I started to feel more apart from the
Separate.
group, and then you had to do what you had to do. So you were working a whole lot growing up, but you didn't have a choice because you weren't getting really anything in child support. I know my dad's income would always go up and down. I will say this though, you should have took him for what he had. Oh, but you didn't. So I'm alluding
When you
to
know better, you do better. Will never
yeah.
happen again.
We ended like you said. You moved out. We went from middle class to almost
Upper
yeah.
upper middle
I was
class.
about to say, like, if it's not upper and we was upper middle class. We had everything. We had the house with the pool, upstairs, downstairs, multiple cars. Like you guys had investment properties. We had started. Man, FedEx has just been so much of a part of our story. It's
Yeah.
kind of crazy. But he's had FedEx Ground back when it was
No, 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 we had FedEx
yeah.
Ground. We
It,
started the FedEx Ground business when it was just starting, when we just
mhm.
purchased ground, and they were just contractors, and
Yeah.
we started that business
And when
together.
when it first started, I remember because I noticed I think it went from that's when trucks were green. They were green and purple
Yeah,
instead of orange and purple.
yeah.
And I remember starting to see the switch. And I remember, okay, you got one truck. The truck he used to bring the truck back to the house. Y'all used to talk and then multiple trucks. And then next thing I know, a Mercedes was pulling up. So we had things and then it kind of switched. It immediately switched. We were from upper middle class to now poor again when that happened and the decision to kind of just have a clean break for you instead of, we could have stayed in the house. We probably stayed in the house, probably had the car and have the business, but that's not what you chose. So you chose that different path. And so you had to go to work. I know, yeah, all growing up, you definitely had multiple jobs. And I guess we didn't fully understand, but obviously you're going a lot. Now, even now, it seems like you still carry a lot of guilt from that.
Oh, for sure.
What you still carry a lot of guilt from that. Can you explain that a little bit? How you feel and just that situation?
Sure. The guilt is that, one, I the home that I grew up in, that was just a single parent home with a lot of dysfunction and all that. I just took my kids out of a two-parent home and put them back in the mess that I grew up in. Put them back. And while we didn't look like we were broke, we were broke. I
Mhm,
mean, I made the stupid decision after we got divorced that I had a minivan.
mhm,
And remember the minivan, the Ford Windstar, and the minivan was giving me some problems, and something had transmission went out or something, and the guy who had gotten the minivan for us, who had brokered the deal with the car with the car dealer, he did. That's what he did. He did on the side in Knoxville, and so we were by ourselves then, and he called me and said, "I have another car for you." I don't remember what happened, but he had another car for me. And that was when we first got divorced. And it was a Land Rover. And I couldn't big more afford that Land Rover. But I was not willing to. My pride is a terrible thing. I was not willing to allow my ex then to see me look like I was not doing well. But I wasn't doing well. And so it was guilt. It was the guilt of having my kids in a situation that I swore, in an old people's term, come hook or crook, that I would never allow my kids to be in. We're actively in this situation. And while it looks like we have it, I don't have two nickels to rub together. And the child support from, my ex was, it was constant, it was steady. He always did what he was supposed to do, but it wasn't sufficient.
mhm,
It wasn't sufficient for two kids, if I'm being honest, but it's and especially based on his income. But there was no income for you. There was no
mhm.
consistent child support for you. There'll be, a couple of hundreds here or there, and then when they would catch up to him, I get 1,000 or 2,000
Big
or
check. I remember riding in the car and talking. This is not if you watch this pop, this is not to bash you. I'm just telling my side of the story. I remember riding the car down. I forgot the street he used to live on with that big hill, and he talking about your mom should be getting them pretty nice checks. I know, like he would take a while and then pay a big lump sum, but there would be a lot of times where,
yeah, and it was lean, and so a lot of times men feel like, especially in the situation that we were in with your ex stepdad, and kind of the way it came across. I know you guys have talked about this since then, but kind of the way it came across, that the money that was coming was only supposed to be for his children. And so at the end of the day, I had to make sure that all my children ate. And so while I didn't want to be away from home as much as I was, because I literally worked two full-time jobs, and then I cleaned buildings at night. And so many times I took y'all with me because it was
We
so
did.
late and overnight, and I was afraid to leave y'all in the condo that we lived in,
We
that
did.
I
There's a
took
lot of
y'all.
nights. We
Yeah,
cleaned both of those buildings over there.
yes, we
And I
cleaned.
think we call we caused you to lose that contract too. I'm sorry about that.
We no, 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 no problem. But um, it was a tremendous amount of guilt from me knowing that struggle, seeing that struggle, growing up in the midst of that chaos, and then choosing myself over my kids. Because if I'm being 100% honest, I don't know to this day, and being much older, much wiser, I don't know if I would make that same decision. I know you guys think that I made the best decision because you all told me later, oh, we would hear you guys arguing. We would see the conflict between you. But to take my kids out of the comfort that they had and put them in a situation where, not every night was there a full meal. There were many ramen noodle nights. There were many
Yeah, a lot of
Stouffer's
fast
chicken
food.
nuggets nights. There were many fast food nights. And
The
I've
fast
never
food.
even lived that kind of life with how I eat, with our nutrition. I've never lived that kind of life, but that was all I could afford. And it
Man,
wasn't like I was out doing a lot of stuff, spending money. I've never ever spent money on myself.
I think I was a little older, so I understood a little bit more than probably my younger siblings did. So I think we felt it a little bit, but I don't think we really cared because it was just our reality, you know? And
And then you got to go. I think what made it a little better, it didn't make it better for me because then I would be in my feelings about it. But on the weekends, you would get to go to, at first, you all got to go to my ex's house. And then after a little while, maybe a year and a half or so, then you didn't go there anymore, but the other kids went there as they should. Those were his biological kids, but you went to your biological family's house on your biological dad's side. So you guys were getting to see something outside of that. But I carried, and I still carry to this day, a tremendous amount of guilt for that.
yeah, and that's one of the for this episode, definitely, we will talk more, but I definitely want us to I wanna let that go. I want this to be a healing moment for us. Not just that, the decision with your mom as well, because I think what came up to my mind when you said that too, and when you said it before, is I think if you would've come down, even if you would've come down and been down, you might have it could have been bad for you as well. So I think the decisions that were made, I want all of us to, and I think we have, but I want you to let that go because you were a great mom even through all that. Like you were a mom, still young, that hadn't been parented and, had been abandoned your whole life. So for me to be here, for my brother and sister to be doing amazing in life, I think it shows what you did. So I think you're carrying a burden that you don't need to anymore. And I think, growing up, we, I think we felt that burden as well. Like we felt everything. So I definitely want you to, I want you to let that go, to try to explore letting that go because you were a great mom. Nobody's a
Mhm.
perfect mom. We don't have perfect parents. We're just not perfect people. But you were a great mom. And I say that from, the bottom of my heart,
Thank you.
honestly.
Thank you. It's difficult, and that may take more time and reflection and self-reflection to get, to get past that. But you just want to do better. You want to do better, and you will do that with your kids. You will want them to do better and be better than you will. But I will say this, every one of my children has gone to college, has gotten a degree, has done extremely well in whatever industry that they were in. You've been a business owner more than once. You currently own a business. You are have been in management at a Fortune 50 company, and in spite of all the obstacles, you've been able to just, we talk about KPIs and measurable and marketable results. You've been able to do that. Um, Brandon is doing extremely well, and he's working for IBM. He was in banking now. Ashlyn got her degree, is in the military, is 25 years old, and in a couple of months will be a captain in the Army, an officer, and just doing, all of you are doing big things. You have a wife. Like at I got married a little bit before you did, but there are people in our families that have never been married. They've never done it the right way. We put the cart before the horse. I certainly did that. People don't understand relationships and familial bonds and that kind of stuff, but you're doing it the right way. I'm extremely proud. And I have to think that as hard as I am on myself about it, I have to think that I had something to do with that, a little bit to do with that.
You had a lot to do with it. That's why I say it's for us and moving forward, it is time to let that go because you did an amazing job and the results speak for themselves. Was it obviously, let me be honest, like it wasn't perfect growing up, but I think I look back and what you protected me from, saved my life. Like, for example, my speech today.
Oh, all the kids that always said that y'all talk like
Yeah,
white kids.
yeah, talk like white kids. From, if you hadn't have stayed in Knoxville and I can maybe would have raised down here, I think my mindset would be a whole lot different. Cause my dad was there, but there was a lot of inconsistency. So I grew up a lot not believing in myself. So I've been very impressionable. So growing up, if we had grew up here poor and had to live, in a place that wasn't like the suburb, I think, we all would have been very different. So from now, teaching me how to speak. And I think even and I talked about the Land Rover. We loved that Land Rover though. We did. It had space. It was nice. We still felt good about ourselves. So I think the scripture says God, all things work together for the good of those who love God. So I think every decision he made helped and put something in us. And the bumps, are just bumps. So I do want to thank you and salute you for being a great mom and raising us right and doing the best you can because you could have bent and you could have just sent us with both of our fathers. And I think I would have turned out a lot different. I know that for sure because it would have been very tumultuous. I know my siblings would have turned out a lot different. I think they would have been good, but they would have turned out a lot different. So,
Well, I'll just end that on by saying that the one thing I was adamant about as a child, we've gone through some things where there have been some requests for change of custody and all that kind of stuff. We went through that a lot, a lot, a lot. But what I would never do, and I would always say this, is that if it's just me and my kids in a cardboard box, then that's what it is. I was not going to let money on, someone having more money and more resources than I did take it away because I take you guys away. Not because I didn't want you to have better, because I did, but I know what it's like not to have a mom. And while every young man should have their fathers involved, if you don't have the caring and the compassion and most of those kind of emotional things come from your mom. There are things that you get from a mother that you'll never glean those things again. And I know that because there were things that I didn't get emotionally that I know why I don't have them. And so even though I was gone quite a bit working, I like to think that some of the compassion and the level of respect and all of those things that all three of you have comes from me. And I just was not willing to be absent in my kids' lives because I know what that felt like. I knew what that felt like, and I just wasn't willing to have that happen.
yeah.
People
And
thought it was selfish on my part because why don't you just let them go? They could live better. They could live better lives because I know what the end of that is.
mhm.
Just being self-serving, it wasn't about me at that point. It was about y'all, but y'all couldn't see that at the time. And you couldn't see that. Like, how could you want to go where it's fun? You want to go where the money's flowing. And we're over here eating ramen every day. and, making a pot of spaghetti that lasts 3 days and that kind of stuff. I mean, I can understand why any child would wanna go where it's easier.
But from there, you have risen from all the way from LMG, you know, to, senior leadership, and very fast time to where we are today. Do you think about that? Like, because again, a lot of people from where you grew up are, dead in jail, or they just kind of, some of them are kind of the same. There was a lot of talent that rose up
Mhm.
from there, but there's a lot of people who didn't make it out. You made it out, and you're now thriving from the point to where now, where you feel like, okay, we had lack growing up, and now you are able to bless us. I mean, obviously, you know, um, we are able to call you if we needed money, we're able to call you and say, "Mom, you know."
I owe you that, though. There was so many years when that phone call would have not returned much of anything. It would have taken me a while to get to it. So, yeah, we bring kids into this world. It's our responsibility to take care of them.
Mhm,
They don't ask to come here.
yeah, but okay, well, what I'm trying to, for you now, you're able to, it's just it's a 180. Um, what would you say to a young woman who's gone through similar, may grew up in a contentious household. You didn't say it fully, but you were being abused in that household. You made it through divorce, single motherhood, and now you are on the path to not only in senior leadership, but to move up prayerfully, and to now the point to where you made it. You're back, to upper middle class and empty nesting, and you're still young. What would you say to the young woman who may be in your shoes that you were when you were young?
Keep going. Don't ever stop because it seems impossible until you do it. But what I had to do, uh, you have to find a mentor. You have to find someone who can help you navigate that part of your life. If you don't have a way to get there, someone who can talk to you and encourage you, even if they can't help you get there, they can encourage you and they can give you some advice. I mentor, that I mentor people. I always find in FedEx, and other places, other organizations that I'm a part of, that I've worked for, the person who everybody said was not going to be successful. That's
Mhm.
the person I'm heading straight to. Because most of the time, success is just measured by some unrealistic standard that doesn't make any sense. And so I want to go help that person because when I started at FedEx, and as you keep saying, no shade to the people that worked there when I started there, they know who they are, but there were very, very few people who helped. They would say, "Hey, I got it out the mud. I did it myself, and I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to teach you this. I'm not going to show you. You got to do it on your own." I don't feel that way. I feel like if you're there and you've been blessed with the opportunity to be there, whether it's the job or it's a church situation, whatever the case is, you need to find a mentor, find somebody that, even the people who you don't think are like-minded, because the people that come and talk to me and say, "Hey, can you help me? I'm living in the projects and I'm doing this and I don't have a car," and baby, I can help you with that because I've been there and I've done that. And even when it didn't look like it, I was there and I was doing
Right.
that. So finding, seeking out wise counsel, seeking out someone who can mentor you and give you best practices and next steps and all that. That's very important. But more than that is those of us who are in, and I know you do this with kids all the time. You train kids and you train them for free if they can't afford it and all that kind of stuff. More than that, we have an obligation to people to give a hand up,
Mhm.
to pull somebody up from where you came from. It's a duty and it's a responsibility. We have an obligation to do that, and not enough people do that. So whether it's just helping somebody, you may not be able to always help them financially, but if you can help them emotionally, if you can help them physically, if you can help them spiritually, if you can help them in the workplace, we have an obligation to do that. And so that's what I always do.
That's true. Well, All right, Mom, this has been a great interview, and I thank you. Where can the people find you if they want to connect? Because I know a lot of people. Last time you came, you seen my team. I told them about you. So if there's any people that work there, they kind of want to connect with you and maybe be mentored by you. Where can they find you? Where can they reach out? Like your socials and stuff like that.
So I don't know what any of those social handles are. I do know that I have TikTok, which I am enamored with at this age, which is crazy. But I have TikTok, and the name is it's Brown Sugar Grits, Brown Sugar Grits. And no, I'm from the South. I do not put sugar in my grits. I do not. But grit stands for a girl raised in the South. So Brown Sugar Grits. Either that or my name Daphne, Daphne. That's really the only one that I do a lot
Mhm.
of connecting on. I do have Facebook, same thing. It's just my name. But anybody who wants to reach out, anybody who wants to be mentored, who wants to spend time either virtually or in person where we can talk about things and I can just share life experience that may help you not make some of the mistakes I made or help you to maybe just get it. Sometimes if we drop a name, if you put a name in a room that would have not been there before, it can gain some momentum and that person can, people can obtain things and they can learn things. We just have to do that for each other. It's unfortunate that that more people don't do that.
Okay. Well, I'll put her links and stuff on the bottom of
Yeah,
this
he knows more about that than I
of this
do.
episode. But just quickly, tell us a little bit about Links Incorporated before we go.
So the Links Incorporated is a wonderful sisterhood organization that was founded in 1946. And it is all about friendship and sisterhood. So it's called the Links because it is the links. It's like the links of friendship, the links of a chain. And it's a wonderful organization. I became a member of the Links while I was in El Paso and met some wonderful, I have some lifelong friends. I know these will be lifelong friends of people that I met in El Paso. And now that I'm in Fort Worth, I have become a member of one of the many chapters there in the Dallas Fort Worth area. But it's just, we do amazing things with Black family wellness and services to youth and STEM activities. And there's just so many different things that the Links Incorporated does. If anyone is interested, please Google or look up the Links Incorporated. You'll find a wealth of information. And how we promote sisterhood and friendship. It's just a wonderful organization. You'll love it.
Okay. Um, well, Mom, again, I thank you and I love you for coming on and doing this interview
I
with
love
me.
you too.
All right. Well, anyway, that's it, Mail to Man family. We hope to have you back soon. Next week, we have some great guests lined up and some more content planned for you guys along this journey from being a male to a man. So we thank you. See you next time. Oh, man, that was good. All right, good.
Ooh, you dug deep, Lord.